This market's growing at about a 27% compound annual growth rate in North America. And so, you know, it's about a $10 billion market today, growing to about a $24 billion market. And most of that is not from new laws that are changing, right? This is from laws that have already changed. So when you start looking at what's going to change in the next few years, you will see that impact the market, you know, out into 22, 23, 24. And then when you look at the global market, we're looking at predicting that it's about a $57 billion market in the next, you know, legal market in the next 10 years.
Right.
And so that's going to move a little slower, but when it changes, you don't have the state-federal conflict. So what's happening in Germany right now is very interesting because they're going to have medical covered by insurance. Cannabis is actually going to be competing on the same playing field as pharmaceuticals. So
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here in Vancouver, Canada, and it's really exciting to be seeing the market development that's happening here and take a look at a bunch of companies, both in the United States and Canada and other places.
Other places. Talk a bit about emerging markets throughout the world.
All right, so let's start with Canada because currently the really exciting places are the British medical market and the German recreational medical market, and there's lots of other recreational markets coming out in the EU. Now, currently they don't grow their own cannabis, right? So Macedonia and the ex-chief of the secret police of Macedonia are actually printing money, supplying the British and the German medical markets right now, right? So Jamaica is about to come in and compete with that for international export, and Canada is about to compete for international export, right? So you're going to see a rush to international markets, and America is actually going to be behind on those markets, right? Because there's nowhere where you can legally export from the United States until federal legalization happens. So Canada is going to be on the forefront of that. Macedonia is going to be on the forefront of that. In Africa, South Africa is going to come online as a major exporter. There's people in Zimbabwe having talks in the local government there and national government about what it would look to do export from there. And there's currently millions of plants under cultivation in the DR Congo already that are being exported in the black market. Right, that they're going to have talks and lobbying in their government to figure out what to do with that, right? So America's actually way behind on the international export game, which is going to become one of the main markets in cannabis.
We've got a really, really great day planned for you today, and it's been great to see all the connections happening, all the business being done, and as I mentioned yesterday, we're just on such a steeper curve than any of us thought we would be even just a few weeks ago. And you can taste that in the air of the conversations that are happening, the sense of urgency around making moves, and you can bet that we're not the only people in the world who are in that boat of saying, all right, if we're going to make a move in this space, now's the moment. And so I feel like it's a really, really great time for that. But as a follow-up reminder to that important point is to trust but verify.
Hiku, we're one of the largest licensed producers in Canada. So we're, I think, about the 10th largest, traded on the CSE today, but soon to be on the TSX within about 45 days. We have 4 cultivation facilities. And by the end of the year, we should be the largest chain of dispensaries in the world, actually, all within Canada. But a year and a half ago, we were out pitching for money, and this fundamental belief and thesis that we have at Hiku, which is that cannabis is a consumer product. And if you believe in this idea that cannabis is a consumer product, it starts to become fairly obvious, if not incredibly obvious, how consumers will buy. Consumers buy brands, and they buy retail. They don't buy based on the underlying agricultural inputs. They don't. They don't do that in coffee. Starbucks sells 1/4 of the coffee in North America, and I suspect none of you know where their coffee comes from, and what I can guarantee you is they don't grow it. I quite love drinking beer. I don't know shit about hops. I don't know any hops farmers. I'm sure there's somewhere out there who grows the world's best hops. I don't know anything about that business other than his or her business is probably a pretty terrible business. We believed from the get-go that cannabis was a consumer product, and we were going to do everything we could to try to demonstrate that cause to the world.
Our point of view on blockchain is, if you're a startup today and you do not have blockchain in your company or it's on your roadmap, you are out of business in 3 to 5 years. The analogy I'll use is 1998 internet. If you were building a software company in 1998 and you put your software on a disk that you walked into a room that was locked that only 4 people had access to, and you plugged that disk into a server that nobody was allowed to connect to but 3 or 4 others, how long do you think that company lasted from 1998? 3 years. They're gone. This is what's coming in the blockchain. It's bigger than anything else. And I will say this to you about the cannabis industry that's unique. This industry has a chance to be the very first native blockchain industry in the world. You can leapfrog all the other industries that are going to spend 10 years upgrading their systems and trying to get there, and can actually start at the end and leapfrog. That's the opportunity in cannabis and blockchain.
Wow, it's fun to be back in Vancouver. It's been 39 years for me. And when Troy came out to the sound of Rush, I remembered that that was the year I discovered vodka and Rush at the same time. I was 16 years old. It wasn't a pretty night at the Hammersmith Odeon. And getting home on the train was scary. So, thank you very much, Tom. Let's talk a little bit about what's hot in pot, and we'll use data from the United States and Canada as well. I can't get this thing tooled enough. Oh well, it'll do. So we're going to talk about understanding the consumer a little bit, the innovation or normalization of the industry. You can see what consumers are buying now, and we'll look at some price trends and brand share information. And as I remember what Deming said, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. We like to base it all on data, not on opinions. So we focus, as Tom said, on consumer insights, understanding who the consumer is, and many of the brands are now realizing it's not just about getting on the shelves, it's targeting a particular kind of consumer with the right kind of message at the right time. We do a tremendous amount on our core work of the point of sale data, so understanding which brands are doing well in which markets, which subcategories and categories of products, and then the market intelligence side of our business, putting it all together to create the big picture. We've analyzed now actually very close to 1 billion transactions and more than 17,000 consumer surveys. So we brought those 1 billion transactions in from our partnerships with dispensaries, especially in Colorado, Washington, Oregon, California, now Nevada and Arizona. We take all of that data, which is a big mess, because there are no standardized SKUs, barcodes, etc. We take the descriptive data out of the point of sale systems, and we've organized it into 140,000 items. There are more than 2,400 brands in our system already.
While they take their seats, Myrna is CEO and co-founder of Aqualitas. She is an entrepreneur, lawyer, innovator, and disabilities advocate. She entered the cannabis industry in 2014. She's one of Nova Scotia's first licensed producers of medical cannabis. Mike Gorenstein, who we had the pleasure of meeting and learning from yesterday, is the chairman and CEO of Cronos Group. Gerge Robinson is president, director, and CEO of RavenQuest BioMed, a Canadian cannabis company that has recently gone public in October of 2017 with a unique proprietary grow technology and a unique contributor to the federal and provincial conversation around regulatory framework for the cannabis industry in Canada. Once again, please welcome our panelists.
I know that there was some discussion about the medical markets in Canada starting to peak out in a few years at about 1.3 billion in spending, but by 2027 we see about 75% of the market in Canada being adult use. I think around 4.5 billion in total sales between medical and adult combined. So pretty aggressive forecasts. even for medical over the next few years, but certainly for adult use in Canada as we progress. So I wanted to get your perspective on if you feel that we'll overperform or underperform those forecasts, and why. So Mike, can we start with you?
So I think it's going to be very tough to do a breakdown of whether medical or recreational performs, and I think there's a few nuances there. So part of that is because you do have government retailers where, as opposed to saying two separate channels that are competing, so there might be incentives to push one way versus the other. But I think $4.5 billion by 2027 is a very low number. I'd be very surprised if it's not significantly higher than that. And I think people haven't started modeling the veterinary market, the nutraceutical and CBD market, including topicals, and how that factors in. So we expect it to be significantly larger. I think the question is, in that market size, who is taking which piece of the pie? So is it $4.5 billion going to the producers of the products, and the rest is going to distributors and government agencies? I think that's probably likely, but overall market size, I think will be much larger than $4.5 billion.